speaking of balance, the next one, next big error that dads are making out there is being too harsh or too soft. Like harsh punishment for kids, it kind of distances them, yet you don't want to give them unlimited freedom.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
John, you've got a couple of teenager girls.
He's already got a dozen and a half stories.
The punishment that works the best, at least with one of them, is taking her phone away, taking her iPhone away.
Yeah.
The thing there is, kids can just do mindless things all day long on electronics, and when they have that, they're not thinking about other things that they should be thinking about. So you take that away from them, it gets them, I think, to understand a little bit about what maybe they have done, what the consequences are, how maybe they should behave. At least I hope so.
Right.
So that's worked well. As far as
so taking the phone away,
some kind of consequence.
Now, would your daughter say that is cruel and unusual punishment, though?
Probably, yeah.
I don't know if they'd say it's cruel and unusual. I certainly don't hit them, and I don't. There's no malnourishment going on.
Speaking of hitting, that is a big topic out there. Do you hit kids?
No.
And there's a whole big philosophy. Now I'll tell you that I was raised, back in the 70s.
The olden days.
In the olden days.
Okay, born in the 60s, raised in the... But, I was raised where, yes, we would get, spanking, and at school we got swatted, by the teachers.
Oh, yeah.
And, I don't want to take this whole time. We could have a whole show just on that. In fact, I think I will. I think I'm going to reserve that for a whole show.
Yeah.
But I hear you saying, that it's terrible to hit kids.
Yeah.
John, real quick, what do you think about your own kids?
I would never hit my own kids. I never had any plans to. I never planned to. I wouldn't, or any other child for that matter.
Yeah. And I've hit all kinds of kids. No.
But I do remember growing up. There was one teacher I had in junior high, and he had a big wooden paddle, and he would hit kids. But it was more actually kind of as a fun thing. Yeah, sometimes it hurt, but and sometimes it was a tiny bit humiliating. But it was one of those things that kind of added camaraderie to this particular class, which was a choir class.
Yeah.
But he got in trouble for it later on, and he probably should have. Things like that can't go on.
Yeah, I had just real quick. I used to spank my child as I don't think I spanked him after 4 or 5 years old, but I used to spank him, and then it seemed like for me, my son had some special issues going on, and it was the only way I couldn't communicate with him verbally because he didn't understand. And so the spankings is what I did. It wasn't like I was like hitting them or punching them, or it wasn't like I was like repeatedly. But anyway, it's something that I felt like I had to do. And yet one time I got chastised in a store where my son was running towards the door, and I caught up to him and I gave him a paddle, just one paddle on the butt.
The paddle of fear right there.
Which he might have even still been wearing diapers at the time. So it wasn't like, it was more of the thought of, him. Yeah. He probably was upset by that, and he cried a little bit. And then the woman at the store yelled at me and said, "We don't tolerate child abuse here in our store." So anyway, so that's something where, I'm on the fence. If somebody wants to paddle their child, if that's how they feel it's best to get the message across to their kid, but you've got to learn. But I think that they have to learn another method.
Yeah.
One that whatever works for their kid, it might be different from what's going to work for somebody else's kid.
Sure.
But ultimately, I'm not a proponent of hitting anybody.
I think it's, for me, it's because I was paddled as a child, and I was, abused as a child, not by my father, but it was, it's one of those things. I look now, and I've always tried to treat my daughter as an adult, albeit she's 7. But as I talk to her as an adult, I never talk to her with the cushy voices, things like that.
Wait, what kind of voice?
The cushy voices, So I always talk to her like an adult, and I have since the first day I held her. I've always just talked to her, and I think that if it's kind of a do unto others. If you feel it's okay to hit somebody, then do you feel it's okay that somebody hits you? And if you don't think it's okay if somebody hits you, then don't hit somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's my opinion on it. And again, like you said, this could be 5 different shows,
Right.
you know, because
Right.
this is such a deep topic and heated topic. And,
Yeah.
you know, as there are generations of men like us in different varying ages that remember the paddle from the principal and remember the belt and the go pick your
Yeah.
switches and the things like that, you know,
And
we have
it's
to,
crazy. Is that
it's a lot to talk about.
as an anti-bullying advocate, you know, I don't feel that if you spank your kid, or even if a teacher paddles a kid, that that's not bullying, that's discipline.
Sure.
I think it's important to delineate between that particular punishment, the physical punishment, and humiliation. It needs to the child cannot be humiliated. That's the kind of thing that is just devastating to the kid.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
Well, and again, and I have to do this show. I have to do a show on that because I have a whole philosophy that is not super popular, and I'd love to get other people's opinions on it as well.
Yeah.
And it's one thing that we can always agree or disagree on it.
Yeah.
And but there's that humiliation that I believe no kid should be humiliated,
Mm-hmm.
but I also believe that no kid should be doing some of the things that they do in school without the fear of repercussion.
Sure.
And so then the decision is what should be done.
What should
if
be
it's not
done.
paddling,
Sure.
what should be done so that the kid doesn't do what they're doing.
What are your levels of
Yeah,
discipline?
I can
Yeah.
tell you that
Yeah.
humiliating a bully does not stop them.
Oh, it empowers them.
And
Yeah.
It's giving attention to them,
Yeah,
and that's
exactly.
what they really want.
Yeah.
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 Okay, so not being strong enough is another problem that a lot of dads are. Not being strong enough. Kids look up to the dad in times of crisis. Does the dad stand by their decision? One of the things that drives me nuts about a dad that I know is that they don't follow through with the decisions that they make.
Yeah.
Right? And somebody in the household really needs to make the decisions. You can't just, well, if my wife or the mom and I don't agree on something, then we just don't do anything.
Yeah. No.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's like, hey, somebody's got to make the decisions. The parents got to work it out and figure it out so that somebody's making a decision.
And that's so important to me when it comes in terms of discipline. A lot of parents are the empty threats. Well, I'm going to do this if you don't shape up. The kid doesn't shape up and they don't follow through with it. It's
Right.
just an empty threat. The kid's going to, the people will start knowing this. The children will start going, yeah, I'm fine. I can do whatever I want, get away scot-free because I'm never punished.
Right.
You know, my parents don't follow through with the punishment. And I think, and it hurts. We don't want to punish our kids. And it, you know, when I punish my daughter, it breaks my heart. You know, I have to walk away and I'm like, oh, am I a bad parent? No, I made the right decision. She was wrong. And then after the punishment is served, then we talk about the problem.
And what's your number one way of punishing your daughter?
You know what? It's basically just, you know, I'll raise my voice. I have a little bravado, and I'll sit her down, and I'll take away her iPad and her toys, and I'll sit her down, and you know, and that's it. You sit there. You do nothing. You know, I don't. You could take away all the toys in the world, and you know. And again, my daughter's not a bad kid, so it's very rare that I punish her. But when I do, you know, if I see her doing something like, if I see you do that again, I'm taking away your iPad. You know, you can't do it. She does it again. Thanks. But Dad, but Papa. No buts. You got warned.
Yeah.
You got warned once, and you had a
Yeah.
chance to remedy it yourself.
I do with when my son was younger, I do the 1, 2, 3, and if I said, you know, 1, that means you need to stop doing what you're doing. If I get to 2, then he knows that I'm really serious. Because sometimes like, are you serious yet? If I get to 2, he knows the next thing is 3.
Yeah.
And if I ever get to 3,
Yeah.
whatever the punishment is,
Yeah.
I have to follow through.
Yeah, and
There's no backing
I
out.
have to say for everybody out there, I'm absolutely beyond myself that I just said I'm going to take my 7-year-old's iPad away. That's I never thought in a million years I would say anything like that
I
as a
thought
parent.
it. I was thinking it. I was thinking, wow.
Wait a minute, we
Wow.
use it for an educational tool too because they're a great educational
iPad
tool.
away.
Man,
Sure
yeah,
you did.
it's I know, right? It's like
Taking
back in
the-
the day, I had to go mow the lawn or take the garbage out, you know, and now iPad. It's
You have to go 2 days without
So-
makeup.
so terrible. Yeah, so terrible. I'm
The 7-year-old.
Yeah.
When they were little, look, like
Gosh
3 or 4,
almighty.
taking a dress away, for one of them anyway, worked really well.
Oh, no.
Taking away their favorite dress.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I think a lot of people don't even think about all these different you know, it's not that critical a thing to take a dress away, yet it could mean so much to a kid.
Yeah.
And what a great alternative than humiliating them, hitting them, you know, whatever. But the thing is that you've, you know, and I say, look, if you do this, if you make me go to 3, right? It's not my choice anymore. It's your choice.
Yeah.
You chose to continue making this mistake.
Yes.
You know the rules, and not once do I ever not do what I say I'm going to do if I get to 3.
And that's perfect.
Because that will teach the kid,
Right.
you know what, there's a chance.
Yeah.
There's a chance that Dad will give me the item or won't take away that, you know.
That exact same
punishment.
thing went very well for me, the 1, 2, 3 thing.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I very, very rarely got to 3, and
Yep.
Yeah.
And it teaches.
You had to follow
And it
through.
teaches the child, and it teaches, you know, no matter what age, especially as they get older, that your choices have consequences. If you choose to stop at 1, then the consequences are good. If you choose to stop at 3, the consequences are bad. You've made a choice, and now you deal with the fallout of those choices, whether it's a positive or a negative.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, you know, not being strong enough, sometimes dads can be a little bit hard on themselves as well, because, you know, it's okay. One of our contributors said that dads have to face the fact that we are allowed to make mistakes.
Yeah.
You know, because we're not superhuman.
Yeah.
And it's like we may make mistakes, and I think it's such an important rule that it's like, you know, if you're dealing with your kid, don't be too proud to realize, hey, you know what, I've made a mistake.
Yeah.
And own up to it.
Yeah.
And if your kid, like my son, he was so good at he would rationalize with something, you know, and I'd say, you know, you can't do this or whatever, and then he'd be like, he would try to give me a reason.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
which I respected, you know, and in our generation, you know, when we were kids, wasn't it, you know, don't talk back to me.
Right.
It's this way because I said it's this way.
Right. Yeah.
But
I hate that in parents.
Yeah,
Because I said so. Wait
we
a
say
minute
that
though.
only joking anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like kids deserve nowadays to understand what is the reasoning behind it.
Sure.
And you teach your kid, hey, you know what? Go ahead and give me your best shot.
Yeah.
Give me your best shot, because if you can convince me, I'm not so macho that I'm gonna, you know, just stick to whatever I said.
Yeah. And I think with this topic, Stephen, is with as a man, and we learn our own humility, and we can say we're sorry, we made a mistake to our child. What that also does is it bookends what we talked about earlier in this conversation of now it allows the child a little, it maybe builds the confidence of the child to be able to approach the father.
But there are some dads that, because I feel that there are a lot of fathers, and I know some, that are not there for their kids. They're not there physically, mentally. They don't talk to the kids. They don't sit down like having a long conversation with the kids.
Right.
And what ends up happening is they are they're just too engrossed in their own life.
Yeah.
And so they're not able. They just end up buying the kids.
Sure. Right.
They're buying the cars and
They probably have their guilt, and they take that guilt and transpose it into material items in order to make up for that guilt, to express love.
My girls probably wish I were that way.
I think most kids do wish it, but there's the guilt factor involved,
Sure.
and it prevents the kids from really getting to know their dad if the dad isn't there, and ultimately the kids, yes, it seems nice, it's a quick fix.
Yeah.
To get some, oh wow, Dad, thanks. Oh, I love you, but they don't really respect the dad.
Yeah, you know what? A lunch in the park, you know, a swing on the swings with your kid is far more valuable than any vehicle, than any dress, than any trinket or toy.
I agree, and if all dads out there can realize that you know, it's the time with the kids that is so much more important than being you know, the favorite.
Yeah, our thing is, you know, my daughter and I, we go down to Santa Monica with our bikes, and we bike up and down the boardwalk, and we have our favorite corn dog stand we stop at.
That's nice.
And you know, it doesn't cost us much. We're outdoors, we're playing. You know, my dad raising us, we didn't have a lot of money. So he did the best he could with what he had, and he always took us camping. he took us outdoors, and he let us, appreciate that stuff. He let us appreciate personal interaction, and like one of my favorite things of growing up is always like a campfire.
Oh, yeah.
Sitting around a campfire, whether it's my family, my father,
sure,
my friends, my daughter.
Nice.
To me, it's that there's not, you can't put money on that.
And now, just smelling the campfire brings you back.
Always,
Brings you back
every
to that.
single time. Yeah.
All right, so the last one that we have on our list from our listeners out there is not having time to listen. So one of the biggest mistakes dads are making, and it really ties into what we just talked about, is not having time to listen to them. They're too busy with work. The father should communicate well and listen, and attentive listening leads to more trust.
Mm-hmm.
And the big thing is being absent. Being absent. A lot of times after divorce, the dads are absent. And I just was interviewing a woman recently where she has a special needs child.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to her about, her life and how everything was going. And you know what she said? I said, well, is the dad involved with your son's life? And she says, oh yeah. And I said, well, how often does he see your son? And she says, oh, he never goes more than 2 months without seeing him.
Wow.
And I was like, what?
Wow.
2 months?
Yeah, it's.
I mean, how can any dad,
Yeah, it might be an arrangement that she dictated, so I don't know.
But like
I know what you're talking about.
the spanking issue earlier in our episode today. This one
That was
could be
yesterday's episode.
yesterday's episode. This could be a week-long episode because there's so many permeating circumstances. Was the father abusive and it isn't allowed to have access?
Mm-hmm.
Does he make that personal choice as a man, as a human being?
Right.
Is he working too much? So even out of a broken, inside of a regular, normal family,
Oh, yeah.
The dads provide, and that requires
That's
a tremendous, and
Exact word I was looking for.
but if you have the ability and the chance, you have to make the time.
Mm-hmm.
You got to man up, and you got to do it.
Because that is providing. Providing is not just how much money are you bringing to the family. It's important.
Yes.
But providing is a good role model,
Yeah.
good father figure, listening
Yeah.
to your kids, having a relationship with your kids, so your kids can trust you.
Yeah.
You're part of the picture.
Yeah.
Even after a divorce, you're still the dad.
Yeah.
And as a kid who was involved in a divorce like that, my dad left when I was 13. My dad was gone from my life a good part of the time, and I didn't have that daily interaction with my dad, and I missed it. It was an important thing that I think every, forgive me, boy needs with their dad if they possibly can. Have that daily or close to daily interaction with their dad while they're in those teenage years.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
Yeah.
really, really
Yeah, my son, 13 seems to be the age because my mom and dad split when I was 13. My wife and I split, my ex-wife and I split when my son was 13.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, my son was 14 when we really finally figured that our marriage wasn't going to work. And it was tough on him, but but I have to work extra hard because every day that I could be with him, it's like a special gift.
Yeah.
You guys, I want to say we have to close right now, but I want to thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve.
It's such a great outfit, and thanks you guys for tuning in and listening because there's so many dads out there. Hopefully, moms, if you're watching this, make sure that your husbands or the father of your kids are the best dad that they can be. Hopefully, we've been able to provide some sort of insight from a self-esteem building point of view and the reference of what our other listeners out there are telling us that they see dads are making those mistakes. Mm-hmm. And it's so important to have our kids have a good self-esteem.
Yeah.
Because we know that if you have a high self-esteem, it's a lot less likely that you're going to get bullied.
Yep.
And so that's one of the best ways we can provide for our kids is help them with their self-esteem. Don't give them too much.
Right.
Don't give them just hand everything to them, but talk to them, communicate with them. Make sure that you're doing your part to help them with their self-esteem so that they're not going to be the ones out there bullying and they're not going to be the ones victim to bullying.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, all right, you guys, thanks again for coming out. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in to Tako Talk, and we'll see you real soon.